Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1000 to 2000 elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment as we edge ever closer to the 2000 elo goal. And today my opponent opens with d4, and against d4 I play the Slav defense, but I mix up the move order to start with c6 to invite my opponent into a Caro Kann. Of course, he could just play c4 and go, no, I want to play a normal Slav defense. And he can do that. But he goes for the Caro Kann, so that is absolutely fantastic. Of course, we're going to go d5. My opponent goes e5, and we're going to play c5. Bishop to f5 is a perfectly reasonable move here, but I like the c5 move, known as the Botvinnik Karls. Knight c6, and knight f3 would be a mistake. And we're going to see if my opponent plays it. And a lot of people do play it. He goes for it. This is 1800 plus territory. And the thing is, with chess.com Rapid Chess as well, an 1800 in chess.com Rapid is probably like 2000 Blitz, maybe even more, because the Rapid pool is really underrated. If you guys play Rapid, you'll know that your rating is much lower than it should be, or you'd expect it to be. And this is bad for white, because what it allows us to do is take on d4. The knight can't take because we will take the e-pawn. And after this happens, bishop g4, white has some problems. But we're going to go e6. We're going to go moves like queen b6, knight e7, knight f5, targeting the d4 pawn. Queen b6 targets d4 and b2. The bishop probably will go to e7. And white has to be incredibly accurate to just not lose within like 10 moves or go down a pawn, because this d-pawn essentially is incredibly weak. It's incredibly weak, and if the d-pawn falls, the e-pawn falls, obviously, because it's defending the e-pawn. And the e-pawn it's a little bit overextended if the d-pawn falls. Now, what should white be doing here? Well, he can take immediately. That's the most testing line. After knight to c6, he could go bishop to b5, but this is the most common continuation. Like, if you start a game in this position, this is the most common position you will get, which is crazy, like, statistically. Bishop e2, I think we should just go e6. We don't want to get too greedy too quickly. We don't just want to chop and go queen to b6, because white white can't play that. I think white could go knight to c3, counterattacking, or just take the pawn with the bishop. We need to be a little bit patient, but in the long term, this will be a very weak pawn. And bishop to e3 is played by my opponent, of course, trying to defend. We can consider queen to b6, going after the b2 pawn, because the bishop no longer defends it. However, I think white can get away with knight to c3, or knight to d2, actually, and give the pawn up, and after rook b1 we have some problems. So better, I think, is just knight g to e7. I think this is the correct idea, going for knight to f5, which puts pressure on the bishop and the d4 pawn. Knight c3 from my opponent. Okay, I thought that knight belonged on d2, to be honest, but okay. Knight f5. And we're preparing bishop e7 and castles. We're also applying even more pressure to the d-pawn now. I don't know if I've missed an opportunity to win the d-pawn, but I don't think I have. Okay, bishop e7 looks fine here. Queen b6 also looks fine, but knight to a4 looks a little bit annoying. That's something you always have to watch out for, because it defends b2 and attacks the queen. So let's just go bishop e7. Let's be nice and simple. And in the long run, our position should just be better. My opponent plays h3. In these lines, you normally wait for the move h3 and then you take on f3. I've had the opportunity to take on f3 for many, many moves. It's probably a viable move in every single position since putting my bishop on g4. But if I can force my opponent to essentially waste a move with h3 and then I take, then I much prefer that. Okay, now let's assess. We could just castle, absolutely. There's also bishop g5, which is a very common idea in these positions to try and trade off this bishop, especially because there's already pressure on it. We could go queen b6 as well. targeting d4 and b2. But again, I think my opponent can meet it with knight to a4. So bishop g5 looks very, very tempting. Very, very tempting. If rook e1 defending, if take, I don't think we have a real follow-up. We could just castle. And taking probably just helps us because it becomes really hard to defend this. Although, maybe if I move my bishop, my opponent can try to invade on d6, which could be annoying. So for now, let's just castle. Okay, bishop to g4. Interesting. This is a move. I've seen this idea before. Should we take? Pawn takes... Well, bishop g5, queen f3. Don't love it. We could go knight to h4, which is a common idea. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? I mean, knight h6 obviously makes no sense. We could go maybe bishop g5. And if bishop takes, but then pawn takes, rook takes, that's better for white. So, no, probably not. Again, we could take. But I think all that does is help white by opening up his rook. So, knight to h4, I think, is the move I want to play. Let's play it. And if my opponent goes g3, probably just drop the knight back. He could try and expand with moves like f4. Maybe that's a problem? I don't know. It's interesting, though. If he goes g3 here, and, I mean, knight g6 is our only real option. f4. Yeah, he does go g3. Well, I don't think we have a choice. f4 looks like the only logical move. Maybe I should have taken the bishop. I mean, we'll find out in the post-game analysis, of course. Bishop to f3, though, does not look like the move. This looks a bit too passive. At least in my book. We can even consider the move f6 here, because the pressure has been taken off of e6, trying to open up our rook, and maybe even put our bishop on f6. I suppose my opponent's trying to argue my knight is not a very good piece on g6, whereas on f5 it was quite a good piece, which is true. We could go rook c8, which wouldn't be a silly idea. We could go queen to b6, and if knight to a4, probably queen to b4. Just putting pressure on the knight. Maybe a3 can be played there, though, and my queen's a little bit silly. F6 looks really tempting. I think I like it. Let's go f6. Because yes, I know it weakens my e-pawn, but I think opening up the f-file and also getting my bishop to f6 and opening up this diagonal for myself and opening up, you know, against the bishop should be good enough compensation. I would assume so anyway. I mean, if take... We could actually take with several pieces. Taking with the pawn wouldn't even be a ridiculous idea, trying to play e5 in the long run, but I think we'd struggle to defend d5 well enough to make that happen. Taking with the rook, my opponent could go bishop to g5. We have ideas of taking here, but I think this works for white, and we're probably just going down an exchange there. So I think we probably have to take with the bishop. And I think this is an interesting position. We have good pressure on d4. Our e-pawn is weak, yes. But maybe we can play something like queen d7 and rook a to e8. And maybe try to play e5 in the future. We do need to try and get this knight into the game. That's one of the issues of our position. We could also go a6. Trying to go queen d6 without knight to b5 being annoying. However... I think my opponent may be trying to go knight to a4, knight to c5, so a6 doesn't really make sense in light of that. So queen d7 looks a bit better. What other options do we have? We have bishop to g5, putting pressure on this bishop and opening up our rook, which looks like a valid idea. Maybe we could try and put our knight back on e7 and into f5, where it would be quite a good piece. Particularly now these pawns have been committed forward, this is actually a bit more problematic for white. If knight e7, bishop g4, going after e6, of course. If then we go knight f5 and my opponent trades with me, I think that should be a good trade, because we have f4 coming at a good opportunity. Although d5 will be weaker there to moves like queen b3, which is a bit frustrating to deal with. So, also, don't mind me wearing a hoodie. It's just freezing in my room because my radiator isn't working right now, unfortunately. What else can we do? What else can we do? I don't think we have loads of options. I think this is a... Well, no, then this comes with a bit more oomph, because knight c5 would come with tempo on my queen too. So if this, we'd have to go b6. But then, that's fine actually. Queen c2 targeting my knight, I can always go rook c8, and this knight is kind of locked out the game. So let's go queen d7. My opponent could also try and play bishop g4 to try and cause some issues on this diagonal, but I don't think it's particularly a problem. I don't think it is. Okay, bishop g2. That's unexpected. That's unexpected. I mean, it gets the rook off of the bishop off of the rook's line, which makes sense. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps to motivate me keep making videos for this channel and try and keep the daily uploads going. Knight e7 now looks a lot better to try and go to f5, because now there's no bishop g4 either. Also, I defend this knight, which could be useful if I have to go b6. If my opponent tries to go bishop to f4 to get out of the problems, then he will just hang the d4 pawn. So this is actually quite difficult for white to manage. And we can play a move like rook a to e8 at any point. It's not actually that easy for white to put pressure on my e6 pawn. He can go rook e1, queen e2 kind of ideas if he wants. But really, I think the bishop was better on g4. I do think it was better on g4, because it looks strange, but it's actually quite difficult to kick out. It might even be an idea to go h4, bishop h3. That wouldn't be ridiculous, I don't think. Because the bishop just doesn't really do that much on this diagonal. I mean, sure, you're putting pressure on d5, which makes it difficult for me to go e5. I get that, right? Completely understand that. But I don't think that should be white's priority. I mean, the d5 pawn is weak anyway. Even if I successfully pull e5 off and we get a trade of pawns on e5, even if my d-pawn survives for the time being, it's just going to be an isolated pawn that white can target probably relatively easily in the long run. So I think he's got his priorities a little bit mixed up. But then again, we may also have got our priorities mixed up. I'm, no grandmaster. I'm a decent player, but I'm not like a grandmaster or anything. I'm just trying my best. And okay. Queen a4, not a move I've really considered. It maintains defensive d4, obviously pins the knight to the queen. Sure. I don't really know what the follow-up is though. Can I not just continue with my plan of knight to f5? Applying more pressure, applying pressure, applying pressure. This pawn could get overloaded, potentially. Well, there's also no knight to a4 now. Knight to b5 does absolutely nothing. I don't really understand the point of that move, to be honest. Maybe he's just desperately trying to stop e5. Because if something like take, he can get a queen trade and then win the d5 pawn. Maybe that's his point. But again, I don't really care about that. I think knight to f5 makes a lot of sense. I may be forcing the rook to come to d1 to lend more defense to d4. Maybe my opponent has to drop the knight back to e2 to defend, but that's obviously quite passive, and I'd be very happy to see that. I could also consider maneuvering my queen into a square like g6 to try and take advantage of the fact that this pawn could be overloaded. Because then something like this and this, I can win the g3 pawn. That's a possibility. There could also be some very funny tactics with like bishop h4. Yeah, he does go for this. There could be funny tactics with bishop h4 where you can't take because I win your... well, I just checkmate you or something. If the knight takes there, that could be interesting. But yeah, knight e2, not a very inspiring move. I'm liking the look of rook d8, threatening knight to d4, because if queen takes, I have the intermezzo if knight takes e2 check, and then I can pick the queen back up. That looks very tempting. I could also accomplish the same with queen to e8, but I don't love that move. I think rook d8 sets a very interesting trap, and the rook on d8 is good anyway. It's just an improvement. I mean, the knight defends a7. I can always go a6 if I'm concerned. Is it worth taking the bishop? I don't think so. Not yet. The bishop's not going anywhere, you know? If it moves, then I'll just win the d-pawn, so it can't do anything. It also can't be protected particularly well. If rook d8 and queen b3 defending the bishop, I mean, you're just taking eyes off of the d-pawn. I can probably just win the d-pawn. Also, my pawn on e6 is surprisingly good because it locks this bishop out of the game. I'm going to go rook a8, set up this trap. Set up the trap. Rook d1 could avoid the trap, though. Oh, no, it doesn't. If knight takes as rook takes, I can't take the queen because the rook takes the queen. But I think I can take the rook. Again, if you take my queen, I take on e2 with check. And then I just win a piece. My knight may get trapped, but it can always sack itself for a couple pawns. And also b2 will hang at the end of those lines because the bishop will open up. Does this not blunder the game? Knight here. If here I win the queen, simple. If he takes my queen, here with check, king moves. He can take here, but then I take his rook. So that should be fine. I could go knight to h4. Could I take on e3 even? Pawn takes, knight takes. I suppose he has queen d1, trying to save himself. Could I take here? Well, no, then knight takes, and he takes my queen, and I can't move my knight with check. Well, I can move it to e2 with check, but it doesn't come with actually a capture. It doesn't actually come with a capture. I think I can do this. Again, if you take my queen, I take on e2 with check. You can take my knight, but at the end of the line, I should win the rook. So let's do a count of material. Takes. Here, I'm up a pawn and a knight, down a queen. King h1 looks like the only logical move. I take the queen. I'm up a pawn and a knight. He takes my knight. I'm up a pawn. I take his rook. I'm up a rook and a pawn. He takes on e6. I'm up a rook. I play rook d6? I don't know. It should be winning, though. It should be winning. g4 does make things a little bit messier because the knight hangs. But I think it should be okay. Because we should just be up so much material that it doesn't matter. And I know he can create complications with the d-pawn. but I don't think it's cause for too much concern. I assume my opponent missed this, which I don't blame him for. It's not really an obvious tactic. The reason this works is because the queen is undefended, which means he can't just take the knight, because I'll take his queen. And if he takes my queen, this comes with check, which is the crucial idea. Always watch out for tactics. Always watch out for tactics. But yeah, I thought the queen on a4 was a bit strange in the first place. Because, it pinned the knight to my queen, yeah. But pins go both ways. Well, not in all scenarios, but in this scenario, the pin goes both ways. And I can use it against my opponent. Was there a better move for white? Maybe king h1, so that I can't take on e2 with check. But then again, that's not an obvious thing to see. Okay, queen goes to d1, trying to avoid the tactics. All right. Well, I have... Oh, come on. Don't lag. Don't lag. Don't lag. Chess.com has a terrible habit of doing this. We could take on e3 first, because it attacks the queen. And after f takes, we can take the knight. And after queen takes... I don't know. What else could we do? Well, this knight is under attack, and this knight is under attack. So we have to just grab material. We could take here, and it comes with check, so the queen has to take. And then we can go knight to h4. We leave this bishop alive. If bishop to a7... Is that a problem? We could take on b2. I don't know. Knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen takes. I'm not overly convinced, because we have opposite coloured bishops there. I don't want an opposite coloured bishop position, because that's quite drawish. Or it could be. What else could we do? There's got to be other options. We could take on e2, queen takes, and then we could do something different with the knight. I initially thought knight to h4. That may still be valid. We lose the a7 pawn, but worst case, we can go rook to a8. Bishop to b6 may be played, trying to play rook to c7. If here, rook c7... I think we have queen to d6, attacking the rook and the bishop. That should be good. Here, we should just go up a piece. So I think that's the line I'm going to go for. Let's go knight to h4. I also don't want to open up this rook, really. I'd like to avoid that. I know he could have taken here with the queen, but that would have hung the b2 pawn. He maybe has rook b1 there, but I doubt he would have done that. I like my knight as well. It's a good piece. Bishop h1, okay. Okay. We could just go b6, cutting this bishop. We could also go d4, which opens up this bishop, but actually we're pushing the pawn very, very quickly. Let's do it, d4. This is a more aggressive option. f4, e4, bishop to g3, knight to g6. Should be fine. Should be fine. If bishop to d2, we could go d3. We also don't have to go d3. If bishop d2, we could go e5. We could also play rook c8. There's quite a few different moves we can play. e5 does look good, though. Just investing into the pawns. Also prevents f4 to an extent? Although maybe he can play it. I'd love a queen trade, but I don't think I can secure one right now. How are we going to convert this? You know, an interesting idea is queen d6. Trying to go bishop to e5 and mate on h2. But then this bishop takes b7. It's a cool idea, but One for the future. Maybe we just go b6, but then white can invade on c6. The bishop is very, very powerful. I don't like how powerful it is, but I can't do a whole lot about it. Maybe just d5. Then my bishop kind of sucks. I think d3. I think d3 should be played. Because we're opening up our bishop. We're also asking the queen what it's doing. If we can get the queen off of the f3 square, like to stop controlling the f3 square, then there could be ideas of moving my knight and playing knight here. Okay, he goes queen to e4, going after b7. We could take rook b1. Doesn't seem to quite work. Here, rook b1. Here. What can we do? Rook d7. Well, then we can try go rook f7. Although if here, he could take on e6. Which is actually quite annoying. Maybe we just have to retreat the bishop. But then rook b7. Oh no, this might not have been a good plan. This might not have been a good plan. I actually don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Not gonna lie. I'm not convinced with my position. I'm gonna be honest. But queen e6, king h8, bishop b7. I don't think that really works for white. I feel like there should be a way to exploit that. Maybe just knight to f3. Looks decent. Because if bishop takes, rook takes, king g2. There's got to be something there. Maybe just rook d to f8. Bishop e3. We'll figure something out. We just need to move quickly. I've got myself into some unnecessary time pressure here. We're up 2 pawns, but I don't think we're going to maintain that advantage for much longer. I suppose in all endgames, we do have the pawn on d3, which could be a really good asset. It could be a weakness, yes, but it could also be a good asset. Bishop c3 could be an idea at some point if the queen remains supporting the c3 square to try to support the pawn going through. My opponent's taking a think here. He can't allow a queen trade. Surely. Because I mean, he can win the b7 pawn most likely, but that probably is it if he trades queens. I mean, something like here. If that doesn't look good because of knight to f3, you'll have to take. And then you defend h3 with like king here, and then rook d to f8, and yeah, that's no good. Okay, gives a check. We'll move our king. We're gaining back 10 seconds every move, by the way, which is very useful. Our knight's a bit strange on h4, but obviously this is the idea. I've got to be careful my queen doesn't get overloaded. If like my rook ends up on f3, if knight to f3, bishop takes, rook takes, I've got to make sure my queen doesn't get too overloaded. Bishop e3 could be played. That's a move. That is a move. Okay, wow. Missed that. Let's attack the queen. Basically getting my rook out of danger with tempo. Queen b3, good move. Missed that. I don't know what to play. I know the knight is lost now. I just don't know what to play. I don't think this even works. Maybe I can try and create something. The bishop also defends that, which is really annoying. I've thrown this away, haven't I? In low time. My opponent's created some complications. But, okay, there's still some life in the game for us, because we do have... I mean, d1 is controlled 3 times, which is the issue. But we do have some good pressure. We can try and create something. Problem is, the bishop also defends f2, which makes counterplay more difficult. There is no rook c1, though, going after my bishop again. My opponent might just be able to take on b7? Queen b7, rook e1, you can't take it, of course. That's interesting. I'm thinking something like this. Rook e1, if you take, then I just take, and then you have to sack your rook. So then I'd be winning. Really? I don't think I should have taken, but I have. I think f4 might be a problem, opening up the bishop. This is so complicated. b7 I know is hanging in most of these lines. Maybe I should have gone b6, I don't know. I feel like I have to invest entirely into my pawn or I lose. But this also isn't easy for white to defend. Maybe bishop to b3 is a good move, defending the d1 square. Maybe that's a good idea. Although there could be problems with bishop b3, rook e8, threatening rook takes, and rook to e1 check. And if you don't take, then I will win your rook. So the game is definitely not over. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I could give a check. Don't think it does anything. I don't think I should... I'm just playing bad moves, aren't I? Oh, I just hung my rook. I just hung my rook. What am I doing? What am I doing, man? This was abysmal. I got such a good position from the opening as well. Okay, my opponent's missed it. That's very lucky. I still probably lost, but... Oh my god. I mean, I just can't push the pawn through. I don't have enough support. I just don't have enough support. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I have anything. I can't believe I've thrown this away. I mean, I can keep trying to create counterplay, but I just don't think there's any meaningful counterplay left. Because this is defended twice. You can even add a third defender. And I have no way of adding more attackers to that square because I'm simply out of pieces. I should have kept the queens on the board, absolutely. That was definitely a bad decision to trade, but I just panicked. I can try and set a trap. Bishop c2 would lose the game. I could also try and go a5, a4, but I think king e2 just crushes all my hopes there. Because even if I remove both these pieces from the defense of d1, the king will still defend d1. Yeah. Bishop f4 is probably the move, and I literally can't defend this pawn. And I have no tricks to promote. I mean, maybe I have this. Bishop c2. Yeah, you can just do it straight away. Let's give a check. There's still tricks, though. There's still tricks. Okay, that's a good move. Bishop f4, I can't really defend. Okay, that's... I don't really understand why he's doing it like this, but... It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I think you can just take. Oh, no, sorry. Then I promote. Sorry. So you have to take with the bishop. And if I promote and takes, I can't take because of mate. Bishop takes. Now maybe I've got drawing ideas. Because I'm only down a pawn, and with opposite coloured bishops, that's probably holdable. I just don't have anything. Just rook d1. And I don't think I can do a thing. I don't know why he's taking so long about this. This seems like a relatively easy conversion. I feel like he's made this way too difficult for himself, but I suppose I'm the one losing, so why am I talking? Yeah, I mean, it's just game over, isn't it? Okay, sure. Seems a little unnecessary. Yeah, I mean, I will resign in a sec. I'm just seeing if he makes any mistakes. I'm just prodding. But anything. Like, I don't know, maybe he somehow hangs the bishop. If this, maybe I have this, and I can cause issues. Here, I can obviously win the bishop. I don't know, I'm just trying to create anything. Let's do this. Maybe he sacks his rook for my bishop at the wrong time, and I can draw the endgame. I mean, if we come down to a position, actually, where... Oh, I missed that move. I missed that. I completely missed that. Okay, I'll resign now. I missed that idea. I was thinking maybe if we come to an endgame where, like, I don't know, let's say, obviously white is winning, I'm well aware. You probably have this as, oh no you don't, sorry, it's pinned. But if we come to an endgame where, let's just trade a bunch of pieces somehow. I know this is not how it goes, but, let's just say for the sake of argument, like, I can trade off the pawns somehow. I don't even know how I'd manufacture this. But essentially, this h-pawn and this bishop and the king versus my king is a draw because it's the wrong color promotion square. I was thinking I could maybe get a position like that, but yeah, I don't think I had any opportunities there. Maybe back here, I could have done a bit better. The computer does think that I'm completely lost anyway, which, I mean, I obviously am, but let's get into the analysis and see. I was obviously winning from the opening, right? I even got a brilliant move, which I assume was the knight takes e4 idea, because obviously we go for this. Like I said, this is better for black. The opening is better for me. Knight ge7, knight c3, knight f5, castle, bishop e7. I'm playing all the correct ideas. Take, castles, bishop g4. Here, okay, that's a mistake. I should have taken. And gone bishop g5. I saw this. I thought queen f3. And I couldn't see what I was going to do from here. The computer says knight to a5. Trying to get into c4. You know, something like this is completely winning for black. If b3, knight goes back to c6. Yeah, I think I just got spooked by the alignment on the f-file. g3, knight g6. I thought f4 was going to be played, but bishop f3 was played, which is not the best idea. I don't really understand this. f6, bishop g5 was also playable. The reason I rejected this is because I was a little bit concerned about knight to b5 coming into d6. Although the computer doesn't seem to care. It wants to invite the knight in. Go queen d8, and if this, queen b8, and if the knight goes back, queen b6. I suppose if the d-pawn falls, then the e-pawn falls, and then the knight loses its protector, which makes sense, but it's just difficult to play that. ef6, bishop f6, I go for this f6 line instead, rook c1, queen d7, bishop g2. I thought bishop g4 was better, which the computer agrees, but bishop g2, knight g to e7, queen a4. Okay, the computer was initially suggesting the move g5, which is a bit insane, but knight f5, knight e2, rook a d8, not the best move. It wants g5 for some reason. But I'm obviously setting a trap, which my opponent misses. Knight c takes d4, brilliant move. If the queen takes, then here, king moves, here, and the line I was calculating was gf5, knight c1, fe6, and I have to move my rook either here, here, or here. I did see rook d to d8, and after takes here, rook fe8, this pawn actually can't be guarded. That's something like this. This is obviously winning for the black pieces, but my opponent goes queen d1, which is more resilient. Here, this is a mistake. I should have taken here, and then dropped the knight back? No, take. And queen d6. See, I was thinking, this is an opposite color bishop position. This is difficult for me to win. I'm up at pawn, but I think the computer essentially wants to try and take advantage of the weak dark squares. I think. I mean, okay, let's say white plays some meaningless moves. Queen e5. Oh, does it want to exploit e3 with this? That might be the idea. And this. So if like b4, bishop g5 take, rook here, and white is kind of pinned back. E4 can never really be... Well, the rook hangs, of course, but let's say here, and E4. I can just do nothing. I can also push. But I took on E2 and went knight to H4. And I thought this was good. My opponent goes bishop H1. He should have taken on A7. I thought that after this, I was better. And I am. Although there is bishop C5, which I missed. And I have to go rook F7. And white gets the tempo quickly. But bishop H1, D4, not the best move. Knight G6 was better. I did consider knight G6 as well, but I think I panicked a bit with D4. Bishop D2. Again, knight G6 is the move. I went D3. Okay, that's also fine. Queen E4. Again, I need to play knight G6. I took on B2, which is fine. But after rook C to E1, I need to go bishop D4. Give up the pawn on B7. And after queen D6, I'm better. Maybe the idea is to create this battery I was talking about, and that's really difficult for white to actually deal with. Bishop E3. It's not to do... It's nothing to do with this, actually. It's just D2. And if you take, I have this. And after rook takes, queen G3, knight F3. Wow, okay, I did not see any of this. Queen D4 is what I played, which is a blunder. I just completely panicked in low time. I should have just brought my bishop back and been okay with rook B7, but I panicked. Queen G4, sorry, Queen D4 even. Queen E6 is obviously the move. King H8. Bishop G5 is a mistake, though. And my move was not good. This was better. And after bishop takes, rook takes... Obviously, white is better, but I can try and keep pushing. If something like rook FD1 is played, yeah, I do have some ideas. Wow, okay, I blunder, though. I thought this was a good idea, but I missed queen B3. See, if my opponent had played anything else, literally anything else, like queen D5, then I can just drop my knight back, and I'm completely fine. Probably easier to play from my side because of my d-pawn. I missed queen b3, and this is just a double attack. I went bishop c3, which is the best idea. d2, queen d5, a very good move from my opponent. A move like rook bd1 potentially allows me to get more counterplay because the queens are still on the board, but queen d5 will come at some point. I couldn't think of anything better apart from taking. I had no idea where to move my queen. There's no good square. The computer wants queen e5, which still just allows a trade. I took bishop takes, rook e1. I'm trying my best, but there's just nothing. f3, good move. The computer actually wanted g5 to try and force this bishop away from this diagonal, I think. Oh no, to go rook e5, sorry. And then there's bishop d2. Bishop d2. And white is up a couple pawns. So the computer thinks he can win this opposite coloured bishop endgame. But this was probably a better try, to be honest. Rook e1, f3. Rook takes f1 is not good. I should have gone rook to e2. I don't know why I didn't play this. If bishop c4, I can just keep more material on the board. Keep creating more chances. But I took, which was not good. Rook d8. I obviously just hung a rook. My opponent missed it, though. Rook d6, bishop g3, rook b6. Here I was trying to set up some tactics like this, but my opponent saw them. King e2, a5, bishop c2, rook e6, bishop e4. Again, I was trying to create tactics like this, and you have to take, and I will checkmate you. I can even promote to a rook, and that's mate. Again, I'm just trying anything, but my opponent blocks. b6, bishop f2, rook d6. And the problem is this works. Now, you can't take with the rook because I obviously promote with check, and I win the game. But you can take with the bishop, and I can't go for this same idea because I can't take this because of mate. Now, if I had one more move, right, then this is holdable. Because my king escapes, and I'm down a pawn, but opposite coloured bishops should draw. I didn't have time, though. I go g6, but now my opponent brings the bishop back. King g7, rook d1, king f6. I don't really understand why he didn't just take, but bishop d3, king e5, bishop d2. I drop the bishop back to try and create any kind of counterplay. I was expecting this, and I don't really know what I was going to do here because I don't have rook to a6. So I'm probably just completely lost. Also, this is threatened, but bishop e4, rook b6, bishop takes a5, rook a6. I completely missed this move. I was thinking something like this, and I'm obviously lost, but like I was saying, if I can get that endgame where the h3 pawn and the bishop and the king are against my king, I can just run my king to the corner, and that's a draw, but no such luck. My opponent played very well. I threw away a completely winning position after finding what I think was a very nice tactic, but my opponent defended well, fair play to him, and like I said, the rapid rating pool is very underrated, so this is tough. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see another very interesting Caro Kann video, check out the video appearing up here, and if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun to follow right from the start, check out the playlist down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.